This is the Men's Couch podcast, and our goal for Men's Couch is to get men together and to talk about mental health and to also get to know each other and get to develop friendships to and kind of like a safe atmosphere.
Nice.
Yeah. So part of like the inspiration for starting this is to just I think it was what was it was kind of one of the inspirations was like meeting you online. So we were like how we were able to like connect.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that like learning from you and like your journey, it kind of like inspired me to want to create a well lead to create a podcast. And at first, I was a bit hesitant about making a podcast, especially about like men's mental health, because I didn't think anyone would actually want to do it. But we're getting like good turnout, so
Awesome. I'm glad to hear
yes,
that.
yeah. So um, and I know like a major discussion that we usually talk that between us is usually the topic of friendship, and I
Mm-hmm.
guess we can kind of like delve into that, maybe like explore that today if you want to.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Earlier today, I was um, the book you recommended, Deep Secrets by Niobe Way.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So I was like getting to. I'm just like sort of in the first couple of pages. I actually just started reading it. It's really interesting so far.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah, I read that book a long time ago. And I just thought it was really fascinating, and it's funny how often I read articles about men's friendships and things like that. Just how they cite that book so often because she does just such thorough studies on how men have closer friendships when they're younger, and then when they get older, they societal pressure kind of makes them drop that. And I just found that just really really fascinating.
Yeah, we can kind of like sort of I guess that can be like a little question like you know do you think like how do you think like societal like just society and like culture because I'm seeing like in here she's talking about like the pressures of masculinity and like she goes into like the why men sort of like even though she does it like in this age group I think it's the age group she studies is like in the adolescence or teenage years or like high school. So it
Yeah,
can
sounds
kind
about
of
right.
like go into even though it's like this age group, you still kind of like um I think it still can be like a little bit it can be applied to any stage in life. But I guess like my question is like what are your thoughts about the book and like the thoughts about like her topics, like how does like culture influence men's friendships and connection?
Yeah. Um, well, when I was growing up, I always, I never really had any close friends. I definitely struggled to make friends growing up, and just always kind of throughout my life have kind of had that uh, that deep longing for friends, and in a sense, like kind of a longing for a brother figure in my life that I felt like I kind of never got, and it's just I thought it was just really interesting, like I was just really curious because I came across that one article in Art of Manliness about the history of male friendship, and just how how it had all those photos from in the past where men were free to show physical touch with each other in such an intimate way, and that was just the norm back then, and that just kind of blew my mind. I was just like, wow, okay, so this is this is a real thing. And so I was really fascinated by that, and had very much a longing for that sort of thing in my life. And so I think sometime a little time after that, that's when I came across Niobe Way's book, and uh, in a way, it kind of confirmed a lot of my suspicions about things that oftentimes, at least in this modern culture, men are sort of shamed out of wanting to show close affection with their male friends, and and yeah, and I think, a lot of times people like to jump the gun and immediately blame homophobia for that. And I think, yeah, don't get me wrong, I think that's a big element of it, because Niobe Way definitely, from what I recall, definitely says that's kind of a big thing. But I think a lot of it is also just kind of this maybe kind of cultural misunderstanding where it's like, okay, that's gay behavior, that's straight behavior, I'm straight, so therefore I don't act that way. Um, so
It reminds me of high school, but
yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because a lot of the men that um, either college students or just people like friends that have come on the podcast have said like to me about like how because I do have a history friend and he just talks about like he gives like sort of like a historical perspective on that and how back then it was just so normal and seen as normal or socially normal to just express affection, express care, and express those things. And it
Hmm.
wasn't like you said, it wasn't attributed to any like sexuality or it wasn't attributed to like any, I guess, um, femininity, if that's the right word.
Hmm.
So it wasn't attributed to that. It was just seen as normal, and that's that's like good that you mentioned that.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of stunning because, especially like considering that that was just recent history, and it's just kind of fascinating because it shows just how like, cultural norms can change so quickly, you know. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, this it is fascinating. I did so just like out of I guess the topic that we're going into, I guess we can sort of delve into I guess like elaborate more on like I guess the societal effects of it. And I didn't read I didn't read a lot of the book yet, but
Hmm.
she does start talking about like culture and how that affects men's friendships and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So
Yeah. I think it does definitely. Again, from what I recall from her book, that it does often lead to like mental health issues, um, and kind of how a lack of connectedness and lack of friendships or lack of basic physical touch can, in a lot of ways, be harmful for your health. And I'm seeing more and more studies lately where, I mean, a lot of people are talking how in this modern day and age when everyone's addicted to social media and their phones, that there's a broader loneliness crisis, that people as a whole, men and women, are less connected and a lot more lonely. But I'm seeing that but from the statistics I've researched, it seems to be affecting men a lot more. Men have generally seem to have less friends than women, and struggle with loneliness a lot more. Have less friends than they did in the past, in past generations for sure. And there's that element. And also, one thing I was absolutely shocked to discover, was really depressing, was that the men's suicide rate is like ridiculously higher than
yeah, a lot of people like have come on the podcast and like just especially when it began, like when a podcast began, we did like just talk about like oh how like the suicide rate is higher and what is that like how does that connect with like loneliness and like connection.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
think, I mean, I highly suspect that the societal attitudes towards men and close male friendships are a big part of it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I know there's often with these things, there's often a lot of complex social things. Like I want to say that's the silver bullet and just completely pin it on that. Like I know there's a lot of other aspects to it and that kind of thing because general, our culture just lacks a lot of connection and community than it did before, since people are addicted to technology. But I really do believe that that's a very big reason. Because I mean, when you see that the suicide rate is like 80% men compared to women, I mean, I'm just like, wow, that's just if that doesn't tell you something's very wrong, I don't know what does.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think that It does say something. I think it like, and I've kind of just done within the past couple of days. I've kind of like listened to like other podcasts and like just other things about like how does like our men's tendency to sort of not talk about mental health or just not talk about be honest and open about mental health and what like been seeing like how that is like affecting how that leads to like the extreme like you mentioned suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like kind of um, doing my research on that, and it's looking like so like a factor is just like not simply just not talking about mental health, and I think that's like a factor. Um, like you mentioned, it is a complex issue. It's a complex. It has like a lot of factors, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess like the one that like I've been focusing on is like our notions of masculinity and how we like how we're able to um, like I guess be authentic, like our authentic selves, and a lot of like if you see like my episodes, what I like kind of like develop as my theory is a lot of like our like authenticity and like our normal desire to want to connect and be vulnerable, like a lot of that is like shamed, like kind of
Mm-hmm.
socialized like out of us, so we're not um like given that like permission to show up authentically or to um connect, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I think that is a thing. And again, it's kind of hard because, like, a lot of culture war things start to mucky up the waters a little bit around that kind of thing, and it just starts to you try to get through that. But I do think, yeah, in some ways, perhaps, yeah, there is a lot of shame around that. Everyone wants to think they have it together, and
Yeah, it's that it's definitely that, and I'm not trying to cut you off,
oh, you're fine.
but it's definitely like that. We're like trying to like the pressure to look like you have it together and to look like you kind of like the I guess a social mask that we're kind of told to present. Maybe like we're not like explicitly told that, but like maybe just implicitly we're told to like carry like the social mask, like hey, I got I have it all together, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. And I mean, and sometimes they're going to often, some people do have like that stubbornness even to like go to the doctor, even for like regular ailments or maladies or that kind of thing. I think we all know that one person
Okay.
that's probably like that. So
Yeah.
that could definitely be the case. But yeah, it's just one of those, yeah, one of those things where you just want to seem like you have it together.
Hmm. And you want to like appear as, and I don't know, like for me, it's like sort of like appearing as, like I guess like a pressure for me is like appearing as like, oh, if I like show this person like this, I guess part of myself, or like maybe whether it be like a what we consider to be like a weakness or like a mental health struggle, then this person's
Mm-hmm.
gonna like judge me, and if they like see me like as like who I am for all of me, then they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna judge me. That's like kind of like my thing, and other men on the podcast have like definitely like related to that like that concept.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it's kind of abstract, like you can't fully understand why you might feel that way. And it's like I do have an example, like one friend of mine, I've known him for a very long time. And it's funny, like I've known him for so many years, like I've literally known him since first grade. Um,
Oh, that's nice.
and yeah, it's been a long time. But it's ironic because it's like I've known him for so long, but I don't really know much about him beneath the surface, which is kind of
Yeah, it's
weird.
always like the beneath the surface. Like, do I like I know you? Like I'm associated with you, but like, do I know like you? Like, do I know you beyond like the surface level things? And that could kind of
Yeah.
Like it kind of like
Yeah.
make it hard to like connect like on a deeper level. Like if you feel like you don't like know the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've tried to connect on a deeper level with him, but problem is every time I try, there's sometimes where we'll be discussing something, and I kind of try to steer the conversation into talking about maybe more personal or vulnerable subjects. He just goes quiet. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's like conversation's over. Oh, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, he doesn't say that. He doesn't, say I don't want to talk about it or anything like that. He just goes quiet and just kind of the conversation just comes to a dead halt, and I just kind of realize, okay, so switching back to a surface level subject again. So,
Yeah, it's kind of
um,
like okay, let's just like kind of break the awkward moment. Let's
yeah,
like, or I will like laugh after I like if I like try to be, I guess, vulnerable with someone, and then that's like kind of like they don't really take the invitation or and that could be like it could be like very hard and like awkward to do like these things with
hmm
other men because um because it's just like hard in general. So I think like definitely like it could be very it could feel very awkward and vulnerable, especially if the other person takes it the wrong way or they don't respond, they don't reciprocate that level of connection.
yeah, and you also just kind of, I sort of, after those few times, I at least tried. I'm glad that I at least tried, but
Yeah, I think it's
it's
yeah.
like, yeah, at the same time, you also just don't want to kill the mood or have an awkward moment that would spoil an otherwise nice time hanging out or
Yeah.
that kind of thing,
Yeah.
So it just feels like it's too much of a risk, and it's just like, I just don't want to try, because it just is it really worth it to have an awkward moment like that, And it's just okay. So
It definitely is risky. Um, and like even like with doing like the podcast with like other men, it can like feel like how like in the back of my mind, I'm always like, how are they going to like respond to like the topics? But they usually respond pretty well. So it's like it's
hmm
good to like when you get good feedback, but like when you don't like get good feedback, it can be awkward, and it's like has nothing to do with you. It's like I try not to personalize it when it
yeah,
happens.
yeah. I try to as well. Try not to let sort of take it personally, but it's like at the same time, it puts a bad taste in your mouth afterwards. So
Yeah, yes, definitely.
yeah. So
So, um, but like even in the like, I guess those attempts at like, I guess like if someone is like attempting a deeper level of connection and they get rejected from like another guy, I guess like if we kind of like sort of put that like in the wider perspective of men trying to like develop closer friendships with each other in general, I think um, like the reason why we don't go into like vulnerability or into deeper connection is that it's because it's uncomfortable and we kind of like we're like sort of like avoiding uncomfortable like things.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, that might be the level on the, perhaps a subconscious
Yeah.
to an uncomfortable area. Or maybe it's in a sense, maybe it's also kind of like a taboo, like subconsciously, like it's kind of a taboo. Like you don't want to discuss these things. Like you don't want to discuss religion and politics with someone. You're just worried it's just going to go into a,
Mhm.
awkward, weird, uncomfortable area and that kind of thing. And I wonder if that's kind of an element to it as well.
Right. And the thing is, it should be more of like, um, and just like how we are like interacting. I think it just should be more of trying to be curious about the other person if we feel like comfortable enough within ourselves, and just like learning
hmm
how to like how to have like a safe conversation because I think like sometimes we can be I guess in American culture I would say we can be like afraid of going into like deeper topics because maybe like we're afraid of it turning into like an argument or something else. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. Or, I don't know. Sometimes some people's idea of a good time isn't like sharing super vulnerable stuff and crying and things like that.
yeah,
I mean, I get that. I mean, I wouldn't want that to be like all of my
yeah. Not
interactions
like
with people all the
all.
time.
And there's like so many of like a variety of type of like friendships and stuff, and it's so interesting. I'm a huge friendship person. I plan on writing like the my book about friendship, and I think it's so cool about like the dynamics. But I think it's like also it can be like uncomfortable, like if you grew up like in an environment where talking about like or being vulnerable was just like not a thing, or it was shamed. I think it's like can be so like it's like I guess like when you're doing it for the first time, it's like sort of like um doing like a tightrope. You're just doing that big risk for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. Or maybe sometimes in some families, maybe they've had to put up with someone who's like a dramatic wreck who literally can't get it together or something, and they just
Yeah.
maybe they just stay in that based on that one bad example of maybe that person who was just super overly emotional and needy and that kind of thing, and maybe somehow that translated into being emotional and vulnerable is being shameful or something like that. So
Yeah, it's like
that can.
you like associate like being like emotional vulnerability with like sort of like a shame lens. If you have that, then it will be like definitely hard to like connect like that.
Hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, that makes
But I
sense.
think like if I like sort of yeah, if I look back on my experience, it's mostly like if you're like maybe like maybe not just like at like home, but like in school. If you grew up like in an environment where like maybe being vulnerable or um, I guess expressing like a deeper desire for connection, if that was like considered like gay, then you're probably not. You're gonna be like more like maybe like afraid or more like avoidant in the future because like if you grew up with that like for 12 years or how many years like in a school environment, then you're not gonna like want to do that in the future. So that's
Yeah.
like that was definitely like my experience or something that like a lot of men that I've talked to like they can relate with like growing up in this like type of environment where it was like shamed made me more like reluctant to do it in the future.
Hmm. Oh yeah, I
If
can
that
I
makes
can
sense.
definitely.
If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh yeah. Well, I can definitely relate because that was kind of the environment I grew up in the early 2000s. Where gay was basically used as an insult for basically anything, um, and and that just became such a norm and such a stigma, and that sort of thing becomes so stigmatized, and every guy in high school is wanting to prove they're not gay and that kind of thing, and so and I think a lot
Yeah,
of
it's kind of
times,
like
yeah.
oh go ahead, sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you meant that. Well, yeah. I mean, it just becomes that it just becomes so stigmatized, and anything that one might remotely perceive as gay becomes kind of terrifying, or and it becomes such a again, it becomes that kind of binary, like I was talking about earlier, like where again, maybe there's this subconsciously this idea gets in where it's just like, oh, that's gay behavior and this is straight behavior, so therefore I must act this way or that way, even if they're not so overtly homophobic, it could be just that's just they just get in their mind that that's just the binary, like I have to act this way since I'm straight or that kind of thing. So.
Right, it's so interesting like when I read about that and I think we've talked before about the work of the author Marissa Franco
Mm-hmm.
and like how like in the past her TED Talk. I love her TED Talk. It's so cool. So she talks about like just expressing like care for a friend, but like sort of like feeling shame toward expressing care for a friend. And I think she connects that back to I guess sometime in the early 20th century maybe, or late 19th century. There was like I guess like the definition of like gay or straight like kind of like change, and maybe that like affected how men view their friendships.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an expert of that, so I just
Yeah.
I would definitely in the description like below I'll definitely like direct people to those resources. But
Yeah.
from like what I got from it, it's like well people in the past like they didn't like see this level of connection and like such binary terms. Like if you were I guess in high school in 1950, they had high school back then, and so say if you like had high school like back in 1915 versus like
Mm-hmm.
maybe like in the 21st century, it wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
like having like that sort of like expressing that deeper level of care or affection wouldn't be like so stigmatized or like shamed.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because I think ironically they were living in a time where they just kind of had no concept of homosexuality in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. They just had no concept of it, and so in that ignorance, and there was no like gay culture or anything like that that stigmatizes certain behaviors and things like that. And so I think because of that level of innocent ignorance, I guess you could say, is just there was just less policing of behavior because again it was just like kind of a concept that they had no idea of, um, and and yeah, and I think in a lot of ways there was also kind of a time. There's also I think these days especially there's again maybe more subconsciously rather than like an intellectual thing, but I think sometimes people like look at like gay and straight as almost like two different species of people.
Hmm.
And again, like I said, or in some respects, almost kind of like, you know, yeah, like well, basically like different species. And so again, like it's just becomes that binary of like, again, these people act this way and those people act that way. If you're part of this group X, then you definitely have to, engage in this sort of, kind of behavior, and that's only a character trait of this type of people or that kind of thing. And so I think there's just been kind of that idea, where it just gets so stigmatized there, and it's kind of bizarrely ironic how in countries where it's sort of a similar thing in a lot of different countries where in some respects a lot of the people are kept sort of ignorant about homosexuality. I mean, partly because they live in like a really like homophobic culture. I mean, like the Middle East or India and things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating a return to that, but to that type of culture. But it's like, but since they're kept in sort of a state of ignorance about it, it's like so common for men in that culture to hold hands, and that's not a stigmatized thing, and which is something I just find really fascinating.
Right. It's like they just see it as just a um, normal just level of connection or affection. It's not like sexualized in terms that maybe someone from like America might see it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah, yeah, because like two men in America holding hands walking down the street are kind of sending out a signal that we're a couple in a relationship, basically.
yeah.
Like that's
So
the cultural expectation.
right, and um, I think like just cultural norms can play a role, and I think like our I guess like definition of I guess we can go into like definition of like masculinity as well, because that like sort of like affects okay sort of like it's like a rigid thing like men don't do this, and we see like
Mm-hmm.
maybe like women, I'm not trying to compare, but we might see like women's friendships be more like emotionally expressive or just like affectionate,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like kind of like made on those set like you said like just sort of like uh binary terms of like this is like what a man is. And I've talked to some of like my women friends on this podcast, and they've asked me like how they've asked me like questions like how hard is it to like if you're a guy, like how hard is it to deal with like vulnerability and like emotions, because they were like curious. And because like to them, I feel like maybe it might come more easier to them because they've like been socialized um to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Or at least it's encouraged more.
Yeah, it's encouraged
Yeah.
to do that.
Um, yeah. Yeah, it does get into a big can of worms when you kind of like try to look at the cultural expectations and differences between men and women. It's like how much of it is truly a product of biology and how much of it is truly a product of culture and things like that. Things get really messy. I do believe there is a line in there somewhere where there is like elements of biology and things like that. And at the same time, there is also that spectrum where it's like, yeah, there is a good chunk of it that's due to like culture and things like that. So, and it's just like it's one of those things where you have to discern, kind of carefully discern and look into that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of yeah, but I think that at least nowadays that is considered very much a more of a modern cultural expectation. Um, Ironically, because it's sort of ironic. We sort of stereotype people in the past as being a lot more reserved and closed off and prudish and that kind of thing. But in a lot of ways, it kind of turns out. I think in a lot of ways, the opposite's kind of true.
I know, and it's surprising to see that. It's like, whoa, like what? And it was like back then, so you kind of like figured, well, if like masculine like expression was back then, you kind of figured that it was a lot more closed off versus like
Mm-hmm.
maybe like now we're but maybe maybe in some cases it is like you said, the opposite of what we think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Where it's actually been sort of regressive. Yeah, I think that is kind of the funny irony. I think a lot of people, like, a lot of people think we live in a much more liberated culture nowadays, or more sexually liberated, or all sorts of other things. But I think the irony is that we're actually a lot more prudish now uh, than we were in the past in many ways. We've actually regressed in a lot of ways, and a lot of folks don't realize that. We're in some ways more prudish than a stereotypical Victorian age person, right?
Hmm.
So I just find the irony there just really kind of funny. And don't get me wrong, there have been some improvements for sure, but there's just also some areas also where I think ironically we've regressed. So.
And I think like kind of like now, um, maybe within the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years, kind of like see like, okay, how are these like maybe like how are these like masculine standards, like how's that like affecting men in general, and that maybe like mental health wise people are like seeing that now, and they're like sort of that when you're like see it through like a mental health perspective, then that like encourages them to go outside of what's called like maybe like the quote unquote man box, or like masculine standard of like
Mm-hmm.
what they've like grown up to believe. Because like if they follow like those masculine standards, they like recognize the consequences of those, which is like maybe loneliness, or maybe just like hiding like a mental health um, struggle. So I think that's, if they like recognize that, then they're just like, oh, then I don't want to like I don't want to follow these masculine rules.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Um, Kinda. Could you sort of rephrase that again? Like,
So I would say like a like so basically like I guess an example is like if men like go to therapy or if they I guess if they sort of go outside of um if they start going outside of like the so like a masculine role is like oh like boys don't cry or
Mm-hmm.
don't like show your emotions, but if you see like the consequences of that, then that like kind of like forces you out of like the masculine roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think so. And I think the one, like I said, the one thing that a lot of men kind of need to realize is or become self aware about is that again, like in a lot of weird ways, these norms are actually more modern than we realize,
Mm-hmm.
and they've only came about like maybe in the past 30, 40, 50 years or so. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not a matter of oh, it's always been that way. Men have always acted this way, and it's like I think once you realize that, then it's just like, oh, huh, interesting, and then it makes you question a lot of those more modern standards more.
Yeah, it kind of like leads you to a question, and I think there's like kind of like a I feel like there's like maybe like a I don't know I guess like a men's uh from like what I at least see on um like maybe sometimes in the media or like when I'm like researching, I see like sort of like a movement or like a willingness of men trying to step out of um those like masculine standards are not like that you know that's not helping them anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like they kind of like admit like like this isn't helping me. Just like I guess hiding my emotions or doing these things. So it's not like helping me. So I have to like step outside of those rules. Um, I did watch a funny SNL skit. So I guess like an example was like I did watch an SNL skit about like men's mental health, and I was like surprised to see it. It kind of like came up in like in my on YouTube. I was like, huh. I was like, it was like weird to see that on SNL, but I guess I don't know. I guess like this kind of like a sign that maybe it's like kind of like the like this topic is like kind of like trying to reach a broader audience, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I didn't see that sketch. I'd have to uh, look it up to see it. But that does remind me, there was another weird thing that happened on SNL regarding like men's mental health. It was like during Weekend Update, and Michael Che was telling a joke and basically said, a new statistic now shows that men are likely to die on average 6 or 7 years earlier than women. And when he said that, like a lot of people in the crowd cheered at that and like cheered really loudly too. And I'm just like, what is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
Now, in all fairness, like it was kind of a trap where like the punchline of his joke was, well, the reason why is because the reason why, ladies, is because we get tired of hearing your boring ass stories when some of us dies inside. So, um, that was the joke. I mean, okay, that's funny, but at the same time, like the fact that people like cheered that much at like the statistic that men are dying earlier, I'm just like, what's going
It's
on here? That's
concerning.
yeah, like that's a good thing that men are dying earlier. Like, yeah, that kind of worries me.
But I think I
So,
guess like in that context, it was like kind of like a trying to use humor to deal with like a an uncomfortable reality.
hmm yeah, like I do try to think, well, maybe that was kind of like playing into his joke, having the people cheer, then turning the joke around on them and making that joke and that kind of thing. And but also in a weird way, also kind of pointing it out, like that's how like in a lot of ways men's mental health is not taken as seriously, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that too. It's like okay, maybe just like just now it was actually being taken seriously, and that kind of was um, reflected in the SNL skit that I watched, which
Mm-hmm.
I can send it to you later. But
Yeah,
that's kind of
sure.
like what I was like surprised to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just I think I'm like certain like to see I think and just like in general I'm like seeing a lot of um good things about like this topic. So because sometimes when you like try to like research or write about it, it's like can sometimes be like very difficult, whether it be like
Mm-hmm.
men's friendships or men's mental health, because it could probably it's probably not like as probably still not as widely talked about as like maybe women's mental health. And when I maybe if like because I guess most of like podcasts that I listen to or like things that I watch is like seems to be like women are like more, and I'm like generalizing, but it looks like women are like more comfortable with like talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like you think people are becoming more comfortable talking about it? You mean?
um, well, yeah, I think like as far as men, like we're at least becoming like more comfortable talking about it. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's like a good sign.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. That's always something I'm happy to see. Happy to see like your podcast kind of talk about these issues, and I'm seeing more and more and more men's groups and organizations starting to form
Yeah, like
online
just
now,
like,
talking
yeah,
about these things.
online. I see it online, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know if maybe after COVID I've sort of like noticed that um because like I guess mental health was more brought to the surface after COVID, and like
Mm-hmm.
people are like sort of noticing that, and they're noticing like, hey, like these topics are important now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, but I can be a hipster now and say like I knew about this before it was popular.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
because yeah, it's something I've noticed for a long time. Like I started researching and looking into it a lot when I was in my, maybe 10 years ago or so when I was in my 20s. So,
okay.
um, yeah, I've been looking into it a lot, and I'm just like, this can't be right. What's going on here? So,
So maybe like just so maybe like kind of starting like in the 2010s with like I guess the internet kind of being more accessible or just more widespread, that people feel more comfortable talking about it, which is like
hmm
maybe like an effect of that. Like people are more comfortable discussing like men's mental health.
hmm Yeah, especially when you're under that, anonymity a little bit. You can, get away with that a little bit more. Because it's kind of, and the one thing that can often get in the way about talking about it in real life is that a lot of times you sort of end up with like a lot of these unintentional like socio-political ramifications where people like assume the worst about what you're saying because you might have you're talking about wanting men to be more vulnerable and showing emotions. Some groups of people might automatically assume that you're some kind of crazy radical feminist, and then while maybe more the liberal feminist crowd might assume you're sexist because you're talking about how bad things are for men, and and goes into that horrific can of worms. And that's the thing that is unfortunate. You do often get those like knee-jerk reactions from kind of both extremes when you try to talk about this, and even though that's totally not what you're even going for. So
Yeah, like that's like not your intention, but people might like assume that that's your intention.
yeah, they assume you're coming from like a radical political viewpoint or something, which I think that might be another aspect about it. It's just like why it's harder for men to talk about these things. I think that's probably another good point. It's just again, there's kind of like an unintentional like political ramification to it as well, which can make it difficult.
Yeah. Um, but I think like so far, which like helped me like researching and understanding like this topic of like men's friendships is, um, oh gosh, what was that book called? It was like a book, so it was like I think it was like the thing is the Man Box or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like something like that. It's called the Man Box, and I think you had it as well, or you have it, if I'm not
Uh,
mistaken.
or was it the male code? Was
Yeah,
that
the
what it
male
was?
code. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Uh-huh.
So that like helped me understand because he doesn't just like he kind of like goes into like different perspectives about like how men connect, and it was like so interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been a long time since I read that book.
Yeah,
I'd need to.
I haven't read that in a long time, but
Yeah.
it was definitely interesting.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I need to reread it now to refresh my memory on it.
Yeah,
um, but yeah, I agree. Kind of that male code, but yeah, there's those stigmas about how you behave with other men.
yeah, and like how it's yeah, and I think like that's like that's like really like one of the main reasons why I started Men's Couch is to like begin like a conversation about it and kind of just like develop ideas, and I just want to see like everyone else's like perspective about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like there's no like right or wrong answers. There's no like there's another thing that I like say about like the podcast is like we're not mental we're not mental health professionals. Well, at least I
Yeah.
mean I will be later, but
Mm-hmm.
we're like just sort of we're taking about like our experience and how we can like sort of like move forward and like kind of um, see like what is the benefit of actually talking about this, because I feel like as we like I think I didn't see like the benefit like before the podcast, like now that I'm actually like now that I've sort of kind of like have a group of men that come and talk like every Tuesday, I sort of like see the benefit of it. Like it benefits their lives, and it like it's like I'm like glad to see that. So kind of, I guess like that. With that being said, it like goes, um, it like dispels like the myth that men don't need to don't need to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like apparently we do, because like there's like good effects of doing it. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's like benefits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it's not just like me and my experience. Like there have been times in my life where I think I have definitely seen the negative consequences of these things. Like unfortunately, last summer I had a friend who took his own life, and and that was really definitely really startling and upsetting. And the thing is that I know he definitely. I mean, he was married and had kids, but he really had no community. Like he lived in the middle of nowhere, and uh, and it's just like despite his best efforts, he couldn't really find much community or many friends or things like that. And I tried to get together with him more times, but he lived far away, and he was just kept saying he was too busy, too busy, too busy, and then later on find out he took his own life, and that was you know really upsetting. And don't get me wrong, like there could be a lot of other factors as well. I'm not saying again like lack of intimate male friendships was the primary cause, but I really do think it was again at least a big factor, because like I said, he did tell me a few times about how he struggled to find community and didn't really have any friends since he kind of lived in the middle of nowhere. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like at the very least, like I have seen how these sort of things can, how loneliness and things like that can impact men. And I think unfortunately, the consequences are really devastating.
Yeah, I remember like we mentioned that about your friend, and I think um like I guess like another that could be like another topic like in the future that I can talk about on the podcast is like the influence of community and like feeling connected, and how that can
Mm-hmm.
be that can be like that could help you with mental health and that. So I think like that might be like maybe that might be like an extreme, I guess, like example of like the consequences of not talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, we talked earlier about the how ridiculously higher the men's suicide rate is compared to women, and it's like it at the very least it shows, yeah, there's something going on here. So
Yeah, I think maybe like just like with that, like people started pay more attention to that, and there's like,
mm-hmm,
oh yeah, there is like something going on, but like kind of I think just maybe like getting out of that like is more, it could be like complicated
mm-hmm,
for men, like it's like how do we like start these conversations. And I think it really begins with conversations, like
mm-hmm,
um and just like hearing different perspectives. It really like begins with that, of like
mm-hmm,
how we can kind of like make, mental health and men's friendships better and just more like deeper. Like I think it starts with just like conversation and
mm-hmm.
just and I think
Yeah.
there's also like an aspect of like what I do is like, doing a whole lot of research on like the culture of masculinity. I think there can, I don't want to like go in like a rabbit hole of just that one factor, but I think
Mm-hmm.
just like of getting out of where is that going? Like learning to like have um like talk about mental health. I think it's just like begins with just stepping outside of that the male code, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word. It's like
Mm-hmm.
learning to step outside of that and realizing the benefits of that.
Oh, absolutely. And I have found some places where it's I've found like places for men to like be vulnerable by its nature. Like last year, I joined a support group for addicted to porn and things like that. And I have to say, it was definitely a very moving experience because they really created like a really awesome, safe environment for men to be vulnerable and emotional and share like a lot of their story and things going on in their life that they felt like kind of led them to their addiction and things like that. And I just, I was just really amazed by that because, yeah, a lot of the times in the group, a lot of the men did get very emotional when sharing their stories. Some cried and, shared real pain. It wasn't one of those awkward support group things, or anything like that, where you're in a crummy church
Yeah.
basement and everything and drinking stale coffee or anything like that. It wasn't like that at
My
all. It was,
gosh.
yeah, it wasn't like that at all. It was legit. It was really real. It was really, really just really good, really, really good place just to connect with those men. And they were all really awesome and really supportive. And we had a lot of hugs and I love yous and things like that. Many times, like especially after we shared our stories and or got together afterwards to grab lunch or dinner at certain places, and it was really really nice. So I don't know, like maybe I mean I'm not saying maybe to your readers if you're looking for something, I'm not saying it has to be a porn support group, but just anything like that. I mean it can be kind of hard like a lot of times trying to find like a men's only thing, especially when you're a younger guy, because oftentimes when you have like men's groups that are like with the church or something, it'll typically be older men, and it's harder to find someone like groups of guys that are like in their 20s and 30s. Um, but either way, I mean, that's just a suggestion. That's a good thing. But of course, not just for like the place of finding men to be vulnerable with, but also again, I think well, again, I think that the men's loneliness thing has often contributed a lot to a lot of men having porn addiction struggles and things like that. It's I think for both for connecting with other men and dealing with your issues with addictions and things like that. I think that's a option as well as something that I would recommend.
It's so like cool that you mentioned that, because I think like I think we we don't like see that as like, I feel like initially we don't see like talking about like our struggles or addiction problems, we don't like see that as like an opportunity for connection, but that's where we say like vulnerability is an opportunity of connection, like sharing like these um maybe I don't know the good word for it is, like either weaknesses or these places that maybe that you're stuck or that you are weak in. We don't like see
Mm-hmm.
that as like actually um like opportunities of connection, because it's kind of like shamed over. Maybe it's like a shame thing where you think like you're gonna like experience rejection with when sharing like your struggle. But it seems like you
Mm-hmm.
didn't experience it. Seems like with your experience, you didn't experience rejection. You actually experienced the opposite, where people were
Mm-hmm.
like supporting you and like you know learning how to develop like that brotherhood.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I mean, everyone's struggle in the group was different. Not everyone was the same. Sometimes, it's not always just porn. A lot of times it can be like marriage infidelities and things like that as well. And, everyone's story was different. Like they just had like a really nice job of making it just this, just this judgment-free, open, loving environment. And I really was impressed by that. Again, it was just so refreshing to see. It's just not, uh, I'd never been in a part of a group of men like that, and I just thought it was really just a really beneficial thing for me and for the men in that group, and it was just really really cool. So yeah,
So it seems
so it kind
like
of opens up a wider issue. So go ahead.
so I think like maybe I guess this is like sort of like my perspective. So maybe like having those opportunities for men to connect and over not necessarily like the same struggle, but revealing like a struggle or this
Mm-hmm.
can actually be like an aid to the male loneliness problem. So we'll probably so that would like help to at least like heal that like that disconnection, is to actually connect. I want to like kind of like use your example as like connect with by sharing like this struggle or this area of my life,
Mm-hmm.
because I think like I feel like men, like we all have a desire to want to support like our friends in their struggle. I feel like that's like sort of like a innate desire to want to do that. It's just like we just need to like sort of get there.
Mm-hmm.
um Learn how to get there, and it was like that having that like safe environment was just had a lot of benefits.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's 'cause it is like I've mentioned with my friend. It is awkward to like try to get there on your own. Sometimes it's yeah, it can be just an awkward thing where you're just not entirely sure what to do when you're on your own and you're not in a right quite a proper environment. Um, and and it's also kind of nice again because sometimes other men's groups can be just kind of uh, again, kind of like will just be nothing more than that material surface level thing as well, where it's just like all you do is, maybe again, maybe if it's like a men's church thing, maybe you'll just read a Bible verse or two, and then that'll be it. Then you go out to the bar or something like that, or go out and see a movie. And else apart from that, and it's like that those things can be kind of shallow. Like, I mean, I imagine maybe it would have its fun moments, but I feel like it wouldn't do very much for me. So, which is why it's really cool to find a group that does have like that vulnerable level to it.
It's like having that more, I guess. So it's basically like kind of like I think everyone has like the desire to be seen and like just known, but also just like validated for their experience. And I
Mm-hmm.
think like having like other men validate your experience can definitely like or accept your experience can definitely like definitely creates connection.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah, it really, really does. And yeah, I think so. I think it's like a subconscious thing that all men have. They want to. be seen and be vulnerable and affectionate and known and loved by other men.
Because
I think,
that's like a hold on, that's like a human like desire. That's just like a human
yeah.
thing.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm not saying like only men. I mean, we do with
Yeah,
other people in general, but I think especially there is also a special desire for that just for with other men because sometimes there's just that level. I don't know what you want to
of
call it,
like
like a
brotherhood.
yeah. Well, like there is like also that like emotional intimate like wavelength, I guess you want to call it that it's just one of those things that like women are not going to understand, just like how women are on a
Yeah, no,
certain
yeah,
wavelength with her
definitely.
that we won't understand no matter how hard we try. It's just there's just something special between the sexes that between the same sexes that they need to connect
The
with.
only the only we can fulfill.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think it was something earlier generations just kind of took for granted and saw as normal, and now sadly it's something that's so rare these days.
Yeah, I think it's like something we have to like relearn or something. We have to like kind of learn that because you grew up like like maybe just and like just like years and years of like an environment or like a school where it was just like sort of like sort of like I guess socialized out of you, then it was
Mm-hmm.
just it's gonna be definitely like, well, how do I do this? This is like, how do I do this? And I think another good book that I want to talk about is I think The Will to Change by Bell Hooks.
Mm-hmm. I'm
I
not
don't know if
familiar with
you
that one.
okay, you're not familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, she really goes into like into debt about how she talks about like patriarchy and like how that like the mindset of patriarchy does like how that is like actually harmful to men
Mm-hmm.
because of like what we have to do like according to patriarchy you must like I guess deny a part of an emotional part of yourself but
Mm-hmm.
she goes way deep into that the social dynamics of that.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's
So
yeah, yeah. That makes
so it's
sense.
called
Like
yeah.
so like
Sorry.
that yeah, oh you mean so like that sort of system is just one of the things that kind of contributes to men not being close and emotional with each other and that kind of thing.
Yeah, she definitely says like, okay, this is like actually like she said this actually like harming men, and
Mm-hmm.
like that's a really thought provoking book that she did. Trying to think of like other books, but it's it also reminds me. I don't know if you like seen last year like the movie Barbie was super
Mm-hmm.
popular. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I never got around to it. I saw Oppenheimer, so I
Okay,
saw half of Oppenheimer at
so
least. So
I won't spoil I won't spoil the movie, but I think like the Barbie movie kind of touches on that subject,
mm-hmm.
but it's it's like sort of and you wouldn't expect like a movie like that to do that because it's like it's a Barbie and
Right.
I like when I went to see it I was like what is all like the fuss about Barbie but when I
Mm-hmm.
watched it I was like oh my gosh this does say a lot this has a lot to say about like men and like patriarchy but I
Mm-hmm.
think it was funny though but I think
Yeah.
that's kind of had a lot to do with that but which
Yeah.
not knowing that the movie was like so popular, I'm wondering if that like and it had like that type of message. I'm wondering if like men are like can like kind of like see like okay this is how like the social influence of patriarchy or maybe growing up in like an environment like that where you're kind of like told to like deny like an emotional part of yourself where that like they're seeing like the effect of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. One of these days I'll get around to finally seeing that. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
rent it online. It's I just never got around to it last summer. I probably would have been the only people in the audience not dressed in pink.
Yeah,
But
that movie was everywhere.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, yeah. What he says, I'd like to see that and kind of examine that theme and look into it. Yeah, because I think so. It is. It's kind of one of those things where where again, it's just kind of that. Um, it's just one of those things where like one of those systems just do kind of like in a lot of ways kind of spread a lot of like spread a lot of like misconceptions about things, and again kind of maybe might create like kind of these social norms, again like I said, that we think we're always the way, but are actually kind of relatively new, and and how we want to examine those things and look into that. So it's yeah, I mean, it is one of those themes I resonate with.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Um, Now that we kind of like died down like with the episode, is there like anything else that like sort of piques your interest about, I guess, men's mental health or men's friendships?
Um, hmm. Oh gosh, there's probably going to be like 100 subjects that I'll think of like 10 minutes after hanging up. Um,
Okay.
but I mean, oh gosh. Well, I don't know. I just got to say, it's. I mean, I can say that on my journey, it's been really interesting, like trying to like again kind of look into a lot of those um, cultural expectations of masculinity and friendship, and it can be difficult. It can be definitely a struggle sometimes. Again, you're trying to navigate all these socio-political landmines and try to look at it objectively, and like it's like, I mean, one thing I will say is like it's like when it comes to challenging gender norms, one thing uh, that I like to just kind of really like to do, like the popular thing is nowadays is to like just merely reverse them, just reverse the gender roles, and
Hmm.
just put a man in a frilly dress, and it's like, oh, stunning and brave, and that kind of thing, and and to me that's very, again, very surface level, and and it's just not interesting. It's not creative. That's like my other thing there. Maybe this could be like a whole other podcast. Probably it's just the only
Yeah.
subject I can think of. It's one of those things where I think I think in a lot of ways people are kind of re-examining gender roles a lot nowadays, but I don't think they're like doing it very well. They just think that they're only being like really, they think they're being really innovative by just merely reversing them, instead of like just like
Mhm.
looking at the substance into these things, and like or beyond the surface level stuff. And I think that's kind of the biggest issue nowadays is where it's just kind of doing it on that level, where it's just like, yeah, I do want to challenge gender norms, especially when it comes to male friendship, and look into those things. And but don't just half-heartedly reverse things. Just really look into it, and again, look at historical precedents and things like that, and really, be really, just be really critical there and look into that. And I encourage people listening to this podcast to do that as well. Just re-examine those things and look into it. But just be a lot more discerning. Don't just reverse things and suddenly think you're a genius. Yeah, do as much critical thinking as you can with that.
Yeah, because not all, um, not all like of masculinity is like terrible, or that's not like that's not what the podcast is saying. It's just
Right.
like kind of
Yeah.
like we're really kind of like just saying, okay, well, what is like harmful like to us, and what is helpful. There's
Mm-hmm.
like some aspects of masculinity that are just maybe just have just been around, but maybe just not working.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really just asking those questions.
Yeah, and I would also say, like, again, like when you're trying to discern these things, it's really important to really try to like ignore the extreme voices on either spectrum. It's you don't want to you don't want to listen to the crowd that says, masculinity is bad and blah, blah, blah. Don't listen to them. And don't listen to the other end that says, oh, you're just trying to emasculate us and turn us into women and blah, 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 blah. Whatever you do, don't listen to either of those sides.
Yeah, it
All
can be
right.
very, very messy or
Yeah.
very
Or
extreme.
the reactionaries or extremes, I mean, these subjects can provoke a lot of extreme emotions, shall we say, to say the least. So I think that's important when you're discerning these things. Try to do your best judgment when looking into them, and not making any snap judgments or be reactionary or things like that. Do your best to discern and research these things.
Yeah, it's always like best to maybe I guess like think more critically about like these topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Think for yourself.
So I guess like as um as we like kind of like close out the podcast, is there like anything that need to like maybe that you want to like mention or say?
Um, no, not really. That last tangent was kind of my last thing to say, I guess. Just
Okay,
saw that. Yeah.
all right, that's it. That was good.
Oh, thanks.
So to my listeners, so this is Men's Couch. I'm interviewing Brian about uh, the topic of men's mental health, and this is I hope you enjoy this thought-provoking discussion.
Yeah, thank
And
you. Yeah, I
yeah,
enjoyed it.
as I enjoyed having you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed our chat. It's been a good one.
All right, so I'm gonna sign off.
All right.
All right.